And actually, one of the things that I always wanted to do was actually be a programmer, or a fighter pilot or a helicopter pilot. And I found out real early on that I couldn't be a fighter pilot. I really haven't figured out why. The military will not let you be a pilot if you can't see out of both eyes. I'm mostly blind in my left eye. And so I pretty quickly then decided that I was going to be a programmer. I became a programmer almost right away. I was in like 5th grade, I think, and my dad brought home a computer. And next to it, it just came with a book that was GW Basic. It's a simple language. I picked up the book, read it, and started programming. And I've done that ever since. I've never have had any time that I wasn't really a programmer. But I still wanted to be a pilot. And I found out eventually that you could be a private pilot. So you could learn to fly and just not for the military. So I did that. I found a flight school and I started to become a helicopter pilot. And the first thing I learned was that flying a helicopter is really complicated. It's got a lot of parts. It's not stable. So your body has to provide that. And so to do that, it's kind of like in a circus, and you've got the tightrope, and then you've got that bike that's it's one wheel. So it's a unicycle, and you get on the bike, you get on the unicycle, you get on the tightrope, and you try to balance, and everything has to be in sync. And if you're a little bit out of sync, all of a sudden you fall and you crash. And it's kind of like a helicopter. To illustrate that, there's a maneuver and something you have to make sure doesn't happen in a helicopter. And I was living in Texas at the time. I met this pilot named Jimmy. Jimmy was a good old Texan. He had the accent to go with it and everything. And I walk up to his helicopter and I introduce myself, and he says, "So Scott, you gotta find out. We gotta find out what you already know. Do you know what house barn is?" And I said, "Jimmy, I don't know what house barn is." So he says, "Well, it's like when you're in the helicopter and you're hovering, and you know how you're supposed to sit real still, and then the wind comes along and it blows some air into your tail rotor, and all of a sudden it's like house, barn, and that's all you see, and it happens really fast." And so he says, "Well, that's what house barn is." And I said, "Okay." We didn't call it that in Florida, but I get the idea. So you got to make sure that doesn't happen. And to do that, you basically have to stay in sync with the machine. You have to feel everything that's going on around you and make minute adjustments, maybe with your hands, or maybe with your feet, and to the controls. So we do that. We practice that a while. Then we go on, and about a month later, I'm ready for my check ride, my flight test. And I get up there, and we're flying around, and he says, "Okay, let's do an auto rotation." And we start to do this maneuver where we're going to fall out of the sky. Literally, we're 500 feet up. 20 seconds later, we're going to hit the ground. And so we start to do it, to practice it. And the tail rotor makes a funny noise, kicks funny. And we both look down at the gauges. And he says, "Uh-oh, this is real. I've got it." So he takes control, and he does the maneuver. And really, it's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, my life flashing before my eyes type of moment. It's like, we're falling. And right before we're going to hit the ground, he finishes the maneuver. It's almost a non-event. We're on the ground. We're safe. And, what I started thinking about after that is I said, life, business, it all really is about the same thing. You have to remember that if you're not in sync with your business, if you're not in sync with your employees, if you're an executive and you don't understand, for instance, what the programmers are doing or what the marketing team's doing, then your business is not going to work. It's eventually going to crash. So I think that's just a good way to look at it. You've got to stay in sync. You've got to know what's going on. You've got to be aware of your situation at all times.